Hello everybody, my name is Christian Swenson. I do videos here on YouTube about autism, autistic consciousness, and life on the autism spectrum. Today I wanted to do a video about gaslighting. Gaslighting, and it's the thing where, like an abuser or somebody, some kind of narcissistic partner in a relationship gets you to doubt your own perceptions of reality. It's based on an old movie called Gaslight, funnily enough. And in this movie, this husband or whatever, I've not seen the movie, I should, basically, he turns off the gaslight. And the woman, the wife, is like, wasn't this on? He's like, no, it wasn't. It was always off. And he's doing that deliberately to get her to distrust her own experience of reality. And not just that. Not only get her to distrust it, but get her to become dependent on his obviously superior perception and his obviously superior sense of what's going on, which is what he does to get her dependent on him. And, you can see how this is relevant for autistic people. Well, we have a different sense of perception. We live in a different sensory world than people with neurotypical brains. For instance, the colors are more vivid, the sounds are louder, the touches are more irritating, the sensations, the textures, the heat, the cold, the sensation of the fluorescent lights, the noise. We maybe see sparks in the air. I've heard of that happening before. The shirt is itchy, that kind of thing. And when we tell someone this, if they don't know what's going on, they're like, stop lying. You're just making this up. And maybe if you don't know you have autism, especially if you're undiagnosed, especially if you can pass for neurotypical, if you're good at masking, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe I am making this up. Maybe this isn't really real, and you start to doubt your own reality, and you start to doubt your own sense of the world, and you start to think you're crazy, and that everyone else is right, and you're the only one that's wrong. I've never had this experience because I was actually diagnosed when I was 6. I've always known that I was autistic. I think I'm pretty unusual that way. I was diagnosed in 1999. It's pretty crazy. I'll maybe do a video about early diagnosis at some point. But I've heard a lot of people saying, like, am I crazy? Am I the only one who's like this? And there's such a relief when they find the autistic community. Like I said, I've not had that experience. Not that I can remember. But it goes further than that, though. It goes further because not only does the autistic person often doubt their own reality, not only do they doubt their own sense of what's going on, but we can often unhealthily learn to be dependent on other people's sense of reality and ignore our own intuition. And I'll get into what that means in just a bit. But makes you wonder, because is it entirely a bad thing to doubt our own sense of the world, to doubt our own sensory world? Well, if we're going to insist that the neurotypical world recognizes a neurodiverse world, recognizes other brains, we're basically asking them to doubt their world to an extent. We're basically asking them to say, don't believe everyone sees the world like you do. Start to believe that there are things you didn't think were possible. And in a sense, that's kind of the gaslighting type deal, right? We're basically saying that what you see of the world isn't true for everybody. It isn't true for me. And we're saying, basically, neurodiversity, in a sense, is getting people to recognize that their sense of the world isn't ultimately real. And that's kind of like a mini gaslighting, but we kind of have to compromise here, don't we? But the problem and the real imbalance here comes because the world is designed for and by and for neurotypical brains. The roads are designed with neurotypical consciousness in mind. The billboards, which are distracting, designed with neurotypical minds in mind. The malls, with all the noises and the textures, designed for the normal mind. TV shows, everything is designed with the neurotypical mind in mind because, they're the majority. And we can dislike that if we want. We could maybe make it different. That would probably be disservice to far more people than it is now. But in one way or another, we have to learn to adapt to a neurotypical world. And in that sense, it makes sense why some of us would begin to doubt our reality, and it makes sense why some of us would begin to be dependent on neurotypical people for help in navigating that world. That's the idea of getting support. We need support to navigate a world that is alien to us. But like I said, this kind of natural gaslighting process and this process of learning to rely on neurotypical perceptions can be very dangerous. And here's why. Because if you've been an autistic person and you've learned to defer to the neurotypical person to see, is this right, is this not, what's going on here, what should I do? Well, what if they don't have the best intentions? What if they haven't got all of their stuff worked out? What if they have a lot of, what if they're a narcissist, right? I was reading a book just now, what is it? It's Autism in Heels by Jennifer, I think, O'Toole. She's great. She's really wonderful, an autistic woman. And she writes about how, especially for autistic women, they can get into relationships with abusive men. And because they're so naive, because they don't notice as much, because they don't have the social intuition, and furthermore, because, like I said, you learn to rely on neurotypical people to see what you don't and to notice what you don't, you just kind of completely give over your authority to this guy. You completely give over your authority to this guy and says, he must know what I don't know. He must see what I don't see, and I'm going to trust him because I can't survive in this big, scary world. And all of a sudden, this guy is beating you and is saying you're crazy and is saying you're stupid and is, lots of really awful things that that you just forgive him for because you're reliant on him and he's right. He's always right. But, it's kind of like that's what happens. That's what can happen when you learn that your world isn't reliable. That's what happens when you learn that your sensory way of seeing the world is going to lead you into trouble, even if it often does. And so we kind of get into this really rock and a hard place, which is that our minds aren't designed for the social world that we have to survive in, but to the extent we defer to people who know what's going on, we maybe will get ourselves into trouble. Because people don't always know what's going on, and people don't always have the best intentions. And so I want to give some advice. I really do. I want to give some advice for how to navigate having different sensory worlds from the people in charge of the world. And it's this. Here's the first thing I'd suggest to you. The first is learn to know your weak spots. Learn to know your blind spots. I'll actually write it down for you because blind spots. So basically, I did a video about this, about the known knowns, the unknown unknowns. Learn to know things that you don't know. Learn to see your weaknesses. Learn to see, oh, maybe I don't always see this. And then maybe when you learn that you don't see this, you can start to see moments where you're not seeing them. And then start to see those things. Like maybe you say, oh, I'm bad at noticing cars coming this way. And maybe if you know that, you'll start to kind of, oh, I'm getting close to a road. Maybe I'm going to go to a spot where I normally don't notice things, and then you can start to notice them. This is a way to start relying on your own sense of the world, your own sense of what's going on, your own sensory world, by learning what it leaves out. Because if you know what it leaves out, you know what people who intentionally or unintentionally, people who intentionally or unintentionally gaslight you use to manipulate you. Which is because they manipulate you through the things you don't see, or the things they insist that you don't see. The other thing that I think is really, really important to kind of navigate this issue is being aware of neurotypical psychology. Being aware of neurotypical psychology. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we know a lot about our own psychology. We know a lot about what makes us autistic, what makes us, what triggers us, what doesn't trigger us, what we like, what our special interests are, how that works, what we need, when we don't need it, all of those things. But how much do we know about the neurotypical person? How much do we know about their world? I think it is really important for us to learn how the neurotypical person ticks. Learn about peer pressure. Peer pressure is something not many of us experience, but is a huge part of the NT's world. We need to learn the incredible force of social approval. Even if we don't experience it, we need to know about it, and we need to see its effects. And we need to learn about awkwardness. We need to learn about all of these social forces. We need to learn about embarrassment, all of these things. And then, because the world is designed for and by neurotypical people, we start to understand the world more. Now here's maybe another thing we can do. What was I going to say? It's to basically recognize that people don't always have the best intentions. Basically, see that people aren't all angels. People aren't always people that are going to guide you or save you. People have bad intentions sometimes, or people don't know what their intentions are, and people haven't got their stuff worked out. And recognize that even if they're neurotypical and they can navigate the neurotypical world, maybe there are things they don't know. And maybe even if there are things they do know, they don't have the best intentions for you. And then here's another thing, which is recognizing that there are good people. Recognizing that maybe you've been abused so much by this gaslighting that you don't trust anybody. Well, you can trust some people, and I think that's really important. And so I hope this has made sense. I hope this has made some sense, at least. The basic idea is that because we live in different sensory worlds to the neurotypical person, we can start to doubt our own reality and start to unhealthfully rely on another person's reality. The key is to learn to accept the help of the neurotypical person without being naive, without being stupid, and without getting into a hard situation. Especially if you're in a negative relationship, where it's like that abusive situation I described it's actually frightfully common for autistic women from what I hear. Don't be afraid to stand up to this guy. I mean, I've never been a woman, in an abusive relationship. I know people who have been, but it can be really hard. And you can be brave, and you can do all sorts of things, and you can stand up to people like that. But be smart and use your smarts and use your intuition, even if you've been trained to think that it's wrong. So that's that. I hope that wasn't a mess. I hope that was good. I do videos here twice a week, and I hope you're doing well. Take care.